This is Daily Gains. Welcome back.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Dave. It's time to get it in. Let's get going. James 1:27. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world.
So, building on the conversation yesterday, James says that the guy who doesn't bridle his tongue, who thinks he's religious but doesn't bridle his tongue, his religion is worthless. But, by contrast, true religion, pure religion looks like this. And he lays out this sort of two-part test. A, are you caring for the widows and orphans? And B, are you keeping yourself spotless from the world? It seems like the keeping yourself spotless from the world is a natural outflow of guarding your tongue. Oh, look, I'm not cursing like the world. I'm not gambling like the world. I'm not smoking like the world. I'm not whatever like the world.
Okay.
Keeping myself spotless. That seems like a natural outflow. And for me at least, that then puts into contrast or into sharp relief even the idea of caring for widows and orphans. And it becomes easy for me to separate out and say, look, true religion is this, caring for widows and orphans. Period, not comma. And I think that one of the indictments that I have for the Christian church right now is that we generally fall into one of two camps. Either camp A, widows and orphans, or camp B, spotless from the world. But we have done a poor job of recognizing that that is one complete statement.
Pick one. I'd agree. We've done a good job.
When I say indictment for the church, I include myself in that. Absolutely, first and foremost.
We have churches that are very much siloed from their communities, let alone from opportunities around them, and they are unstained. They're not. I don't believe that they are effectively living out the gospel, because the gospel requires us to share it, to yes, grow in it, but it does require us to be so seeking to live in relationship with God that we are desirous of others hearing the truth as we heard it, and then coming to know Him. And so this, to me, I see as one thing. I do get how churches break it into halves, but I see it as halves, not two separate things. I see love in both of them being built to whatever keeps you comfortable. And so I know churches that give a ton of money to orphans and widows, but don't talk to them. They don't actually visit. Or they do, and it's a Christian field trip. They visit the ones on the other side of the world, but not the ones in their own community.
Or they will take that money to send to those widows and orphans from businessmen in their church who are operating in the highest levels of worldliness to make that money. And they're not challenging them. They're not saying, hey, this belongs to Caesar. Why are you bringing it in here? You sacrifice that to the idol. Why do you think that that's an okay offering to come in here with? Where we look at the Caesar and say, hey, I have Caesar on speed dial, so come to my church. Church of Caesar on speed dial.
Us to be with, to give time. That is to be close to. And it is not just when things are easy, but in the time of affliction. This isn't driving down the road and giving the homeless person money, which, again, God has made clear. You don't need to worry about it. Just give it, and I will do my part. He is God. Just like He gave it to you. You don't have to fully understand it. But yes, be prudent as far as actually doing what the text says. Go be with the people in the moment that is tough. It doesn't say fix it. It doesn't say pray them out of it. It says visit them. That's huge. Be God with flesh on in their presence and love them well. Just as God has loved you, and that requires being known by them and them knowing you. And at the same time, the rest of the text is, and keep oneself unstained from the world. Do I love God or do I love the world? And so for me, both of these are about love. Like, am I willing to love God and trust God to the point where I can walk through the world and the things of the world are not as attractive because I've given and increased my appetite for Him. I have done the discipline work of not wanting junk food because, I'm training with God. Like I'm going to the gym. And so I don't want the things of the world. I don't want the fast food. I'd rather eat something that's true. And so that's the work. Am I willing to go for the real thing or something that isn't?
So James, I'm sure, again, is thinking about his brother. His brother who was accused of eating with tax collectors and prostitutes. His brother who walked up to Samaria and started engaging with the harlot in the middle of the day, when the only reason to do that is to pay for some love. James knew what Jesus was accused of. He also knew Jesus did this exactly. He cared for the widows and orphans. He cared for the outcast. He cared for the Pharisees, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the harlots. He spent time with them, yet was unstained, not because he stayed away, but because he stayed engaged, invested, knowing to whom he was accountable and who he was representing. So even as he was with the tax collectors and the prostitutes, he wasn't stealing. He wasn't paying for sex. He wasn't condoning. He was ministering to them the love of God. I think there's a lot for us to consider this morning. As you're brushing your teeth, this has been a long tooth brushing, so hopefully you have lots of healthy teeth. We will see you in the afternoon with the beginning of chapter 2. By the way, James didn't put the chapter or verse markers in here, so we're doing this, done a few hundred years after the fact. Nevertheless, just so you know, we've reached this point. James 1 in the bag. Thank you for being with us. We'll talk to you soon.